Hello fellow cinephiles, Film Guru here. Today I'm reviewing Seberg. This was directed by Benedict Andrews and stars Kristen Stewart, Jack O'Connell, Zazie Beetz, Margaret Qualley, Anthony Mackie and Vince Vaughn. The film really tells a true story of French New Wave icon, breathless star Jean Seberg, played by Kristen Stewart, whose political and romantic involvement with civil rights activist Hakim Jamal, played by Anthony Mackie, has made her a target for the FBI's ruthless attempt to disrupt, discredit and expose the Black Panther movement. She is targeted by J. Edgar Hoover's illegal surveillance program, COINTELPRO, a covert FBI operation aimed at disrupting political organisations. The film also looks at ambitious young FBI agent and surveillance expert Jack Sullivan, played by Jack O'Connell, who joins the LA office and ultimately becomes Seberg's shadow. At the cost of, losing his job and everything, he tries to help her in the best way he can. This was a film I saw a trailer for quite some time ago, and I really like Jean Seberg. I've always been a big fan of her ever since Breathless. And I didn't really know a lot about her going in, and I didn't really know a lot about this part of her life. And it was quite fascinating. I didn't know she'd become involved in supporting the Black Panther movement and was a big contributor to that, to try and help them change the way America was. I thought that was a fascinating element. I like sort of ideas, little snippets of people's life rather than a biography. Sometimes works better, where you're able to craft a little section of their life and learn a little bit about them along the way in this particular event that happened. All I really knew about her is she was an actress. She was in Breathless and a variety of other things. And she ultimately passed away in 1979 of apparent suicide, but there was some strange things about that as well. I think Benedict Andrews has crafted a really great film. It's a very solid movie. It looks at an interesting part of history, the late 60s, and what was happening there, and the effects of Vietnam was having on America. I like the look and the feel of the movie. I like the fact it's set in the 60s, and I like the production design of the cars and the houses, and I love the costumes. They're really fantastic, especially all the wardrobe that Kristen Stewart has. She has some really great and wonderful dresses and variety of things that she wears throughout the film that are just fantastic, and she looks really great. I think all the acting is solid. Jack O'Connell's an actor that I've seen in a number of things, but I hadn't seen him in a while, and I thought he was really solid. He has a leading man quality, and I'd like to see him in a lot more. I think he's a very talented actor, and he does a solid job here as this playing Jack Sullivan, this surveillance expert that ultimately sort of doesn't agree with what the FBI is doing towards Jean Seberg. He feels very protective of her and is drawn to protecting her, and I really like that aspect to his character. Vince Vaughn is Vince Vaughn. He's sort of a bit different in this, a bit more aggressive than he usually is. Zazie Beetz is solid, playing Jamal's wife and the mother of his two children, and I like the scenes with her and Anthony Mackie and Kristen Stewart. They're just really interesting sort of actors, and she does a fantastic job, I think, in this film. Margaret Qualley was Margaret Qualley. Look, I liked her in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but I haven't seen her in anything I've really thought she was fantastic in besides that film. And she's fine here. She plays the wife to Jack O'Connell's character, Jack Sullivan. I think Anthony Mackie is a very solid actor and does a fantastic job in this. He's an actor I really like. He's believable, he's solid, he gives really great performances, and playing a Black Panther Party member is really great for him in this, and he really shines in the scenes that he has, and even in the scenes with Kristen Stewart. But by far, the best thing about the film and the performance that steals it is Kristen Stewart's performance. She's fantastic. She's a fearless sort of actress in this. She's come a long way since Twilight, and I've seen a number of performances I really like, but this is probably my favourite so far. She just feels like she knows who she is, and she's comfortable in her own skin, and she's able to create from that. And she brings the real essence of Jean Seberg to the role. And I like the interpretation of this person and how she brings herself to it, but also brings a lot of vulnerability and like an emotional impact that you don't quite expect from this sort of character. She has some really great scenes throughout the film. I love the opening scene where it reenacts the scene from Joan of Arc, where she's playing Joan of Arc. At the end of that film, she ultimately is, for the Joan of Arc story, she's tied to a stake and ultimately burn at the stake. And it sort of focuses on her face tied to this thing, and then flames come up and the camera slowly zooms in on her. And it only occurred to me after the film that this is really a representation or a metaphor for the ultimate whole film. feels like she's being crucified, I guess, in a way, and ultimately burnt by the experiences that she's had and what she believed in. How people that she believed would look out for her were the people that were actually after her and causing her the most grief. And I think this scene represents that. But I think that's a good starting point for the film. There's another scene where her and Anthony Mackie character Jamal are sort of reading this script and she's acting out this scene. And part of the scene, she puts her fingers into the shape of a gun. And this is a very powerful scene, very loaded scene, in that what they're talking about within the script sort of represents her as a person and the things that she's going through and the things that she will face along the way. And there's just this great shot of her just with her fingers out like that and the camera's right on her face. I think it's a beautiful shot. And it just sort of encompasses her strength and her trying to find her feet and trying to do something more than just acting, to make an impact, to really help people, to try and find an avenue to support someone in making the world a better place. There's a lot of moments where she's getting ready for particular things and she's looking in the mirror, and there's some great scenes within this where she just stares at her image. And there's a moment where she rubs her thumb across her lips, much like the end of Breathless that she does, where she stares right into the camera. And it sort of feels like they're recreating this, and she feels like that's someone she wants to be, but she's not that person. She's someone completely different. And there's a peekaboo moment where she looks in the mirror and goes peekaboo like that. I really love that too. It just feels like there's a playfulness to her there and trying to work out who is she? Is she really there? Is she not there? And I kind of like that. There's just emotional scenes throughout the film as well where she's just very effective, where she starts to realise that they're tapping her phones and watching her, and the way she does this tapping thing and expresses her worry and paranoia is fantastic. And just her choices within scenes are just great. You really get a sense of who this person was and you really feel for her as the film goes along, which I really loved. But she gives a tour de force performance and is fantastic in this movie, and is worth just seeing it just for her performance. The only sort of real criticisms I would have for this film is that I didn't really feel a connection with her character to begin with. I did as the film went on. I didn't have that scene, the scene that sort of makes you feel for her character. And her motivations aren't clear to begin with. None of the characters' motivations are very clear. But as the film goes on, you start to learn a bit more. The other thing is, I don't think it took enough risks. I think it's a film that could have been a bit more hard-hitting than it was, and showed scenes in a bit more of a powerful way. I felt it was a solid movie and an interesting story, but I just felt it was a film that could have pushed boundaries a little bit and to really make it something that's quite powerful and impactful. But that's all I really would say about it. The performances are still solid and the story is a solid film as well. Final thoughts. Look, really at the essence, I think it just looks at this young woman who really wanted to do more than just be an actress. She really wanted to be some sort of change for good. And she sort of finds a way in this by doing it in an unconventional way. But she still stands her ground. That's what the film really looks at. How sometimes you have to stand your ground, no matter what happens, no matter the consequences or what can transpire for you. You have to be willing to sacrifice a lot of what you have in order to achieve your goals. And that's what this film really looks at. It sort of reminds me of the David and Goliath sort of idea, where she was sort of like the David character, Goliath, which was the FBI. And it just kind of was interesting how they sort of went about it. And it also showed how the FBI were so relentless with destroying people. Anything they felt that was going against America or the government, they would just slander people and attack them. And I think that's what this film sort of brushes upon. And these things really did happen. But it's really about the strength of this young woman rising above it all and becoming a very interesting figure within her time, as well as within what was happening in America at that time. I'm going to give Seberg 3.5 out of 5. I thought it was solid and interesting film. Kristen Stewart's performance is phenomenal, and it was just a well-rounded and solid movie. Anyway, that's all from me today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please subscribe down the bottom. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Otherwise, until next time, enjoy the movies.